Hey yo everybody, what's up? Tom here, back at you with another video. You know what? I'm peeking a little bit here for sure. I should just lower the gain on my mic here. Hey yo everybody, what's up? Hey yo everybody, what's up? Tom here, back at you with another video. Just going to get my video queued up here. I had a good idea for a video to watch. Should be in my history.
Journey is its own reward. Or, well, screw that.
Why would you want to go?
Open that up like that, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into OBS here. I'm gonna put that video essay up. And I'm not gonna look up a guide quite yet, because I'm kind of lost at the moment in this game. I have no idea where I'm supposed to go.
Go on another trek across the island, risk more lives just to get Jack back.
The survivors of a plane crash are marooned on a mysterious tropical island, but very soon things start to get a little weird. And then very weird. And then incredibly weird. And then weird really doesn't cut it as an adequate descriptor.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
This is a show that goes places, leaves, and then goes back. Lost.
Oh, you know what I gotta do is look at the map here.
What are the odds of this working?
No worse than the odds of us surviving that plane crash.
Lost was a drama broadcast on ABC between 2004 and 2010. It's a mix of
So
Gilligan's
let's go pick
Island,
up
The
my dead
Twilight
body
Zone,
first.
Lord of the Flies, Twin Peaks, Survivor, and pretty much whatever else was on television last night.
This island, it changed me. It made me whole.
Lost was a show that was very popular from the beginning, and if you've ever found yourself in a conversation with a Lost obsessive, you'll likely have mastered many subtle and beautiful ways to change the subject in a way that provides no path back to a discussion on Lost. However, all too often, Lost fans will find a way.
Son of a bitch.
Lost is a show built on a nest of mysteries wrapped in several layers of enigma, shrouded in riddles, and revealed in a way that makes a 400-page end-user licensing agreement seem like light bedtime reading. Over 6 seasons, the show will develop a plot so labyrinthine that would give even the Minotaur a major anxiety attack.
Trying to be funny?
It's also a show that you either really, really love, or you really, really don't. And even if you're part of the first group, you still might have issues with the way
How did
the
I
show
miss?
wrapped up. Especially since, as we'll show later in the video, Lost's finale may require extra work to actually understand what the writer's intention was.
This is quite a coincidence. We've been looking for you.
Once I started rewatching Lost, I really couldn't stop watching, nor did I particularly want to. Lost would often try to have so many plates spinning at once that the audience wouldn't notice the pile of broken crockery on the floor. Lost would also spawn waves of mystery series, some good, some not, some popular and others not. Many would learn from Lost that you don't have to necessarily explain everything.
Why do you want to get down there so bad?
Lee. Why do I want to get down there so badly?
Regardless how you feel about how any show ends, do you watch something for, say, 6 seasons and enjoy it moment to moment? Or do you just skip to the last 5 minutes of the final episode? Lost might just end up being one of those shows where the journey is its own reward. Or, well, screw that, we just want answers. Lost posed a lot of questions and answered most of them, but there were times where the answer would take a long time coming, and on occasion those answers could be buried within a cacophony of misdirection, sudden violence, lots of hiking, and even more questions. If you want answers from a single viewing of Lost, you'd best bring pen and paper to jot down some notes. What is the island? Who is the island? When is the island? How is the island? Why is the island? And what is the Wi-Fi password?
But I've looked into the eye of this island, and what I saw was beautiful.
In Lost, characters start off looking for ways off the island and taking care of their basic survival needs. This will eventually morph into a battle between destiny and free will. Is everything in Lost predetermined? In a battle between free will and destiny, who wins?
I'm not sure of anything yet.
Or is Lost set in a world where free will does not exist, but free willy does? There'll be a little lust, some unrequited love, some epic romances, though in Lost, the love stories will more often than not end tragically, much like my Skippy the Bush Kangaroo fanfiction. We won't cover everything in ultra fine detail, since the video will be long enough as it is, but if you're in the mood for an incredibly superficial, inaccurate and shallow dive into Lost, keep watching.
I appreciate that self-awareness.
Every video we do has a short spoiler warning at the start, no matter how old something is, since A, it costs nothing, B, it's a simple courtesy since people are always discovering something for the first time,
How do I
and
go
C,
up?
there's always one annoying twat every 2 months who can't get past a short bit of text warning of spoilers without complaining. Man, you can tell that's somebody who never gets invited to surprise parties.
Do you have any idea how badly I want to kill you?
Lost is such a plot-driven show that spoiler warnings are important if you're ever thinking about watching it for the first time. So the first 20 or so minutes of this video won't spoil much beyond the first season. If you keep watching though, well, you've been warned.
All right. You got a deal.
Lost is an evergreen series where people will rewatch it, but also new generations of fans will discover
Is this
it for the
Bossy
first time.
McBosserson?
Of course I'm upset about Lost. You guys took away my shit before I could watch the last 2 episodes.
For an outsider, Lost's enduring popularity might be hard to explain, but I once went to a Halloween party where everybody was asked to dress as characters from Lost, so I went as Dr. Smith. There were lots of Kates, and Suns, and Claires, and Hurleys,
come
and
on.
Sawyers, way too many John Locks, and the guy who went as Charlie locked himself in the bathroom until he emerged and then jumped off the roof into the swimming pool. But by far,
I can't.
the highlight of the party was the guy who went as Dr. Arst, where he was judged unanimously and posthumously to have had the best costume of the night.
I saw the whole thing.
Oceanic Flight
They're all just wearing
815
dirty
from
shirts,
Sydney
though.
to Los Angeles crashes on a tropical island, and a group of 40 or so survivors try to make sense of their predicament. You'd think they'd spend their days fashioning computers out of palm fronds and coconut shells, but then a lot of unusual and strange things start happening, beginning with a polar bear attack, whispers in the jungle, and a mysterious cloud of smoke. And over 6 seasons of Lost, these are not the oddest things to happen on the island.
We're not the only people on this island, and we all know it!
There's Surgeon Jack, fugitive Kate, conman Sawyer, construction worker Michael, his estranged son Walt, their dog Vincent, rich brat Shannon.
What?
stepbrother
Why do they
Paul,
jump
former
up
Iraqi
like
officer
that?
Saeed, washed-up rock star Charlie, heavily pregnant Claire,
Oh my
Korean woman
fucking
Sun,
God,
and her
dude.
overprotective husband Jin, Hurley, and John Locke. Some characters won't make it through to the end of the show, and new characters will join along the way.
What, am I boring you?
The characters on this show will keep their cards close to their chests, keeping all of their secrets in a vault where much of the time those secrets are revealed just a tad too late. Quite a bit of pain on this island could have been avoided if somebody started a beachside chat with, I don't know how relevant this is, but FYI.
You want to keep a secret, don't tell the fat guy.
There'll be other characters. There's the weird guy Ethan, schoolteacher Arsd, and Rose, who's convinced her husband is alive. But generally, if any of the background characters at the beach suddenly have lines or dialogue, it's perhaps because they're most likely being set up to be killed, and killed quite horribly.
Because nitroglycerin is extremely temperamental. So we...
After the plane crash, people regroup, deal with the dead, they gain their bearings, and try to survive. But then the odd, unusual thing starts cropping up, like a polar bear on a tropical island. However, over time, there'll be more and more elements of science fiction and the supernatural. Alliances are made and broken, people hug in slow motion or go on long hikes, and after they return from a long hike, they hug in slow motion. People have long-held secrets that, if they bothered to share with their friends, really would have made the long hours sitting on the beach just fly by. Questions will be answered, but often with more questions thrown at the viewer. I once had a job interview like that, where they asked if I knew SQL, and I said, yeah, sure, of course I know SQL. But unfortunately, the interviewer said that SQL was his brother-in-law, and then the interviewer gave me a crossbow and invited me to shoot an apple off his kid's leg. So, to cut a long story short,
No,
it was at that point
wrong
that I worked out.
move.
Pro tip, do not
Why am
fall
I pressing
asleep
the wrong
while
button?
watching Lost late at night.
Never press the wrong button.
Because
in this
I
game.
have faith, Charlie.
Lost unfolds in various ways. The show will juggle continuing plot threads within the overall story arcs, and some episodes will be more self-contained adventures that will focus on one particular character, all of which will be augmented with flashbacks to prior events in one character's life. Basically, how that person's life turned to absolute shit before they were marooned.
Oh, that's just sad.
These characters will often find more purpose in their lives on the island than they had in their old life, where, as the flashbacks often showed, they were already lost. Calling the interludes or digressions flashbacks will over time not become an entirely accurate shorthand. I mean, they are flashes, but it's the direction. They will mostly flash back to an earlier memory, and then they'll do a 180 and sometimes a 90, and then yes, sometimes it's a show where you'll need a compass to track the time.
What is this thing? Exactly.
A lot of the time when you first meet them, some of these characters will come across as fairly shallow or cliched archetypes, up until that character gets their origin story flashback, after which the good characters on Lost popped that bit much more.
I promise.
Lost may be a show about puzzles, mysteries, and bonkers revelations, but it's also a drama about people who have secrets, hopes, dreams, nightmares.
That this probably won't have a happy ending.
This is a show about people with skeletons in their closets, while also being a show about skeletons strewn around the island. Characters fall for each other, become friends, or rivals, or enemies, or friends with benefits, or frenemies with benefits, or frenemies with benemies.
All the stuff we gotta deal with, man. This is what you've been wasting your time on?
The survivors are strangers thrown together, working with each other for mutual benefit, or taking up arms for pretty much the same reason. But if we're honest, 70% of Lost's runtime seems to be a group or part of a group on a trek across the island for some reason, where it seems like in a third of those treks, they end up being sidetracked by some other revelation.
Are you lost?
No.
I mean, it's good exercise, and your blisters will heal quickly.
Done this before, Kate.
For people who are marooned on a tropical island, you would think survival would be uppermost on people's minds. The survivors subsist on whatever was salvaged from the luggage on the plane, though Sawyer has done a pretty good job of scavenging items. There was also the island's abundant seafood, often caught by gin, bountiful tropical fruit, and meat from the indigenous boars, hunted mainly by John Locke, till of course he gets distracted. We'll come back to it later, but over the series run, the survivors will find a fresh water supply, and then almost, but not quite miraculously, packaged food, and lots of it. But the thing the island seems to have in abundance more than anything else are guns. The crew find guns whenever they need them, and then when they lose them, they'll find more guns. So, obviously, it's an American show. You can never have enough guns, because nobody will ever be shot out of hand when somebody running on adrenaline is handed a loaded weapon. Feel free to skip ahead to see if that's the case on Lost.
Chances of us shooting each other are much higher than of us shooting him.
Lost was occasionally mocked for seemingly having a very good-looking cast, almost all of whom were aged between 20 and 35. It also will not surprise you that some had worked as models before they were actors. You know, I once worked as a model, but it was as a hand model for Thunderbirds. Now that was a really fun job. The pay was lousy, but the contract had way too many strings attached.
Or else we're just gonna go crazy waiting for the next bad thing to happen.
These survivors have no laundry facilities, and it's very hot and wet. Plus, there's all of that trekking across the island every episode, where they seem to crisscross the island and manage to miss numerous signs that they're not the only people to have lived there. The survivors will get into a lot of fights with each other, yet nobody seems too worse for wear after being clocked repeatedly about the head. You'd think they'll have missing teeth after a few episodes, but not to fear. The survivors will eventually be graced by a dentist who accepts IOUs written on palm leaves.
And then there was Jack.
Jack Shepherd is a spinal surgeon.
Thought maybe
and a
I
Boy
could do
Scout.
it in one
He's not
jump.
an actual Boy Scout, which means he
Do
doesn't
not
have
wanna
a badge
die
for
here.
spinal surgery. He's just somebody who has a strong moral compass on an island where the difference between right and wrong is not always readily apparent. He saved a woman's spine, married her, they later divorced. His dad, Christian Shepherd, was formerly his boss, a huge drunk, and Hawk the Slayer. And I'll give you two guesses as to who it was who had Shepherd Sr. removed from his job.
Okay.
Jack has a thing of sorts with Kate, but because nobody makes much small talk here, they, for a long time, just make eyes at each other, or look jealous, or both. Anything to avoid either of them saying a few simple words.
And have you ever contracted a sexually transmitted disease?
Matthew Fox was still rather well known from the 90s drama Party of Five, where here he spends most of Lost looking rather pained and intense, though that may just be switching to a diet consisting mainly of tropical fruit. Jack processes new information in several ways: blinking, staring off into space, shaking, and pausing while shaders recompile.
Because I'm not a leader.
And yet they all treat you like one.
He's also the person that people go to when they have a problem. It doesn't really hurt to have a doctor when you're marooned on an island and all sorts of weird stuff's happening. He's one of the few characters whose motives are generally clear. Jack is driven by the need to fix things. He'll protect the survivors and maybe get them home one day.
But if we can't live together, we're gonna die alone.
Kate Austin is a woman with a shady past, where she was being escorted back to the States by a marshal in connection with a string of crimes that started small, well, murder, and then spun out of control.
No matter what I say about what happened, about what I supposedly did, I'm going to jail.
Kate's army dad had taught her about camping and tracking, but she's also managed to become an accomplished con woman while on the run. Evangeline Lilly, or to give her full name, Evangeline Lily Pilly Picker Lily Silly Billy Such a Dilly Never Been to Philly New Billing Cycle Millie Vanilli, was a relative newcomer to acting, with only a few credits, where some of them amounted to her being a glorified extra on a television show like Smallville.
The thing that I keep coming back around to is that you want to be hated.
James Ford, aka Sawyer, was a con man who took his name and persona from the grifter who destroyed his family years earlier.
Sorry, don't suit me.
On the island, he proves to be as trustworthy as a cat is around a tuna casserole left on the kitchen bench.
Why would I want to do that?
Sawyer's character development is very 2 steps forward, 1 step back, where he will make connections with other survivors, but then revert to type, which in his case is a type 1 asshole.
The new sheriff in town, boys.
Sawyer tends to refer to everyone by a not all that complimentary nickname.
Son of a bitch.
A love triangle will quickly develop between Jack, Kate, and Sawyer. And Sawyer being Sawyer, he doesn't spend 2 seasons just to put it out there. That triangle will later become a square that will be bisected on both axes.
Don't you want my phone number?
Josh Holloway would appear in many roles. It's really hard not to yell Sawyer whenever he appears in another role.
When you woke up, the transceiver, your equipment was destroyed. That was me.
John Locke is the show's MVP, before becoming the weirdest collection of contradictions. Firstly, he's apparently able to walk, whereas previously he'd been confined to a wheelchair for several years. But on the island, he'll soon find his niche as a hunter and a tracker.
Don't tell me what I can't do.
But eventually his level-headedness will be overtaken by his innate gullibility, as demonstrated in most of Locke's flashbacks. On the island, he's a badass who's just really able to swallow so much bullshit dressed as destiny.
What if everything that happened here happened for a reason?
His estranged father turns up needing a kidney, and so Locke obliges, though Dad turns out to be a conman who cuts and runs, where harvesting his child's organs was not the worst thing he would do. John Locke, for obvious reasons, really does not want to leave the island. Terry O'Quinn was an actor who put in a category of familiar face. I know that guy. One of those actors you saw everywhere, but before Lost, probably didn't know their name. Locke will veer between being a fascinating character to somebody you think must have hit his head one too many times. When Locke is not beating the shit out of somebody, he's getting the shit beaten out of him, either in his flashbacks or on the island, which I suppose is some form of natural balance at play. Every time a Locke flashback appeared, you'd be wondering if this is when they would finally explain his accident.
I think that's why you and I don't see eye to eye sometimes, Jack. Because you're a man of science.
Yeah. What does that make you?
Me? Well, I'm a man of faith.
Over the course of the series, there'll be a constant friction between the rational Jack and John Locke, the believer. What does he believe in? Well, what do you got? John Locke believes the island gave him a gift and a purpose, and Locke is driven to discover what that purpose is, which of course would be horribly ironic if that purpose was just to rake up the leaves. Jack and John Locke will each take turns being right and being wrong, going to extreme lengths to prove their points, and at times coming to the conclusion that the other guy was right all along.
I was wrong.
Saeed Jarrah is a former Iraqi officer who had discovered a talent for interrogation, a talent that he doesn't want to use, but it will prove awfully handy on an island where people would rather take a secret to their grave.
What is the hatch?
A hatch?
As a former communications officer, he's the island's expert on electronics. Now, you might think survivors living on a deserted island wouldn't have much call for electronics in general. But this is Lost, and the island is not as deserted as it seems. UK-born Naveen Andrews took a character that could have easily ended up as a collection of stereotypical cliches and instead turned him into a fully fleshed out character that ended up as a viewer favourite.
I don't forgive what you did. And I certainly don't trust you.
Sun and Jin are a married Korean couple where neither apparently speaks English, and so the pair often keep to themselves. Jin is incredibly protective of his wife, while Sun had been intending to leave the marriage before they left Sydney. Turns out that Sun had actually learned English as part of her plans to get away from Jin and his job as an enforcer for her powerful, rich father.
From the look on his face, even your old man here didn't know you speak English.
It will take a while, but Jin will mellow somewhat, forming friendships with other survivors and eventually learning English. He's a quick study because after a few months on the island, his English is far more intelligible than mine is.
That gives me 2 months.
Yoonjin Kim had grown up for a time in the US, but before Lost had been a star in South Korean films, while Daniel Day Kim had appeared in small roles in practically every show in the 90s and 2000s. He had regular or recurring roles on the short-lived Babylon 5 spin-off Crusade and 24, as well as providing voices for dozens of video games. Most of the couple's dialogue in the first season is in Korean, and Daniel Day Kim in particular had to relearn how to speak Korean fluently. A young Australian woman, Claire, was heavily pregnant and on her way to
I know I haven't fucking chimed in at all at this point yet. I'm chiming in on this. But he has a terrible Korean accent. It doesn't sound fluent to Korean speakers.
Angeles to give up her baby for adoption.
Why would you keep me in the dark, Charlie?
On the island, she will spend most of the series talking about her baby, protecting her baby, looking for her baby,
my baby,
misplacing her baby, and looking for her baby again.
I mean, did she take my baby?
Fortunately, she never expresses a taste
Oh,
for
this
fosters, and there are no dingoes on the island to eat her baby, because a cultural stereotype of that magnitude would have the Vegemite.
Damn, I've been trying to find this guy for fucking hours.
Being eaten by giant spiders.
No such thing as fate.
Emily de Raven is an Australian
Maybe
who started
there's
off in the
a,
Beastmaster television series before appearing on American show Roswell.
I'm the only Australian who loves peanut butter.
I mean, it's not unheard of for Australians to prefer peanut butter over Vegemite. It's weird, but it's not unheard of. And yes, she will be eaten by the giant spiders if she ever returns to Australia.
The old band from ever setting foot in Australia again.
The problem is, in order to defeat the giant spiders that threaten to eat Australian cities, Australian scientists at the CSIRO use peanut butter-based insecticides to control the giant spider population.
You were trying to save me.
Charlie Pace was a faded former rock star turned drug addict, though that's a Venn diagram with a very, very small margin of overlap. Or it's what happens when two circles love each other very much. Charlie had been the bass player in the one-hit wonder band called Drive Shaft, an Iceland brand clone of Oasis.
Last night in the bar, you said you were a fan.
Fine. I'm a huge fan. Drive-Thru is the best damn band ever.
Mancunian Charlie and his bandmate brother Liam have a difficult relationship with each other. On the island, Charlie tries to kick his habit, but finds the allure and the apparent ease of heroin availability on this island is just nothing to snort at. Charlie will get close to fellow survivor Claire, but will find himself bouncing between darker deeds and trying to be a hero. He's chummy with John Locke for a while, and then not so chummy with John Locke. Charlie ends up quite the punching bag throughout the series. One of Charlie's worst nightmares, hardly anybody on the island knew who he was.
I wondered when this was going to come up. Yes, I am the bass guitarist.
Yeah, do you know anything about fishing?
What?
Dominic Monaghan, of course, was in Lord of the Rings. So at the time, he was considered a big get.
You never heard of Drive Shaft?
The band.
Yeah, the band.
Nobody knew he was from Lord of the Rings.
I am in Drive Shaft. I play bass.
Artist and construction worker Michael had broken up with the mother of his child years earlier, and after she died, he went to Sydney to collect his son Walt, who was going to come and live with him. He now has to learn how to be a dad, and is fixated on getting them off the island.
You'll be sailed home before you can...
Bro,
I'm the one that burnt her ass.
This boss
Harold
is ridiculous.
plays someone trying to raise a kid that he barely knows, while trying to protect Walt from whatever the island is cooking up. Walt had a dog, Vincent, and he does take some time to warm up to Michael. But there's something about Walt where he has some sort of power, but as we'll see later on, don't hold your breath for much of an explanation. Also, Vincent seems to have a talent for sniffing out death.
This one goes there, that one goes there.
Okay.
Shannon and her stepbrother Boone were forced together by their parents marrying, but later on slept together because Boone was in love with his stepsister.
Did you hear what I just said? Somebody might have died out there.
Well, we're all gonna die if somebody doesn't do something.
Shannon is a brat who was more or less disowned by her
jumps,
rich stepmother,
I think you need to run
and
the
was
other
being
way.
collected
That's the
by
only
Boone
thing.
when they boarded the ill-fated flight. Shannon spends most of the first season manipulating others to
Are
wait
all the
on her
bosses
hand
going to
and
be this
foot,
hard?
while
This is
Boone
pretty crazy.
becomes Locke's slightly useless apprentice, right up until he's mortally wounded. Ian Somerhalder would be the first cast member to be written out, ostensibly because Lost needed to show danger. One thing about actors being written out of Lost, they will often show up in later episodes. Also, Maggie Grace's other screen dad is a complete psycho.
And I will kill you.
Hugo Reyes, known as Hurley, had been in a mental institution where a fellow patient kept repeating a sequence of numbers. Those numbers stuck with Hurley, which he later used to play the lottery. And then he won $114 million. But that's when his run of bad luck really started. His grandfather keeled over, his new house burnt down, and the fast food restaurant he bought was destroyed by a meteorite that also killed reporter Trisha Tanaka. One of his investments was a box company in Tustin, California. I did. I once worked for a box company. I was the head senior engineer in charge of flaps.
The numbers are cursed. You know there is no such thing as a...
Hurley had travelled to Australia to find out more about the numbers, and later on, when he was on the island, those numbers were still there to haunt him in other ways.
I want some friggin' answers!
If anybody is instantly associated with Lost, it's Jorge Garcia, who for most of the show's run would be the show's comic relief.
Ah, crap. Do over.
He was also, in my view, the character where every time he had a flashback, I was punching the air.
Sorry, Trisha Tanaka.
Each of these characters will have at least 1 or 2 episodes each season where their backstory is the subject of flashbacks. Jack deals with his alcoholic father, Kate's on the run, chased by the marshal, Sawyer wants to kill a conman, Hurley's misfortunes after his lottery win, Jin forced into beating up the enemies of his wealthy father-in-law, Sun making plans to leave him and having an affair with the anti-penultimate airbender. There's Michael's long battle to win custody of Walt, Charlie spiraled into addiction, Saeed's post-war experiences and him pining for Nadia, Claire finding out that she was pregnant, and Locke's continuing run of life conspiring to later.
At least this guy's
fattest,
fun. The last
smelliest
boss
turd
wasn't
on
even
top
fun.
of his thinning dome.
도대체 무슨 일이 일어나는 거지?
저도 모르겠어요.
So we have lots of trekking across the island. Sudden outbursts of violence, people keeping things to themselves, flashbacks to prior events which show how messed up these people were before the crash. When a plane crash improves your quality of life, things must have been really bad.
I think I'm going crazy.
Lost's first season is made up of many smaller incidents on the island, but many of the big emotional beats and plot revelations occur in the flashbacks. Basically all the stuff nobody says on the island. On the island, Claire is kidnapped by somebody who wasn't on the plane. There are random deaths of less well-known survivors, and some less random deaths, including Boone. The discovery of a repeating radio message from an earlier castaway, Danielle Rousseau. The discovery of a metal hatch deep in the jungle, and John Locke's attempts to get it open. Kate has to deliver Claire's baby, who she names Aaron, which is a good Aussie name, but for whatever reason, most people call him Aaron.
You don't know that, okay? You can't say that.
Michael, with help from Sawyer and Jin, builds a raft to try and get off the island with Walt, while Rousseau leads him to a beached sailing ship, the Black Rock, which just happens to be full of dynamite so that they can blow open the hatch.
Fuck!
Look, I dig. If I ever needed dynamite for...
If he
say,
corners
fishing
you,
or
you're
to unclog
fucked.
the
You have to
drains,
get out of
I'll
there.
head down the street to Mark's place, where he keeps a few sticks of dynamite in his shed. Or to be more accurate, he used to keep a few sticks of dynamite in what used to be his shed, but is now his backyard crater.
We had some orange on you.
The first season was where Lost hadn't gone all in on making each episode weirder and weirder, so episodes didn't always end with big cliffhangers. The ending was often preceded by a bucolic montage of the survivors having moments of peace with a song playing on the soundtrack. The pop songs would give way to Lost being more about the actual plot and character development, leading to big endings, though the slow motion reunions would stay throughout the show.
How am I supposed to keep straight who knows what around here? I mean, Steve didn't even know about the polar bear.
If you're watching this and you've not seen Lost, and this video has made you in any way want to check out the series, I'm just going to say this now. Stop watching the video now. Maybe come back when you finished watching Lost.
Okay.
Because after this point, we will be dropping spoilers from across the entire series. So, if you don't want to know who the egg from the f***ing dirt, then we'll say goodbye and see you in another video. Are they gone?
Mind if I show you a couple of really neat things?
Season 2 was all about the Hatch and the mysterious Dharma Initiative.
Where scientists could work to understand the unique electromagnetic fluctuations emanating from this sector of the island.
Season 2 would introduce the Tailies, survivors who'd been in the tail section of the plane. Though their experience on the island has been fraught compared to the survivors on the beach. There's their leader, Ana Lucia, a disgraced cop, Libby, a psychologist, Mr. Echo, a former gangster turned priest, and Bernard, the dentist, who happens to be Rose's husband. Season 2 had the Hatch, the Dharma Initiative installation whereby somebody had to input a series of numbers every 108 minutes, or else, what else? Just or else. Those numbers also happened to be the same numbers that had been cursing Hurley for the last few years. Desmond had been manning the computer, but scarpered once he had replacements. But Desmond was like everybody else. The island wouldn't let him go. He'd gone through a bad patch, finding himself in the army, in military prison, and for a time was a monk, where he picked up the habit of calling everybody brother.
Getting pissed on a lovely wine.
He met a young woman, Nell B. Widmore, but her super rich father, Charles, didn't want him anywhere near his daughter. Desmond will have flashes of insight, particularly in relation to Charlie's fate, and then it appears that he might be able to time travel in some way. He wants to get back to Penny, but the island will always bring him back. Henry Ian Cusick may be the only person in history to make somebody called Desmond cool without resorting to calling them Des. Now, if you know of a cooler person who's called Desmond, but not Des, please send a hair sample to this address.
She's cool. She won't tell anyone.
Honey, I don't even know what I would say.
Despite the Hatch being well stocked and having showers and beds, most of the survivors stay on the beach, with just a few of the main characters manning the computer in shifts. I sympathise with Desmond. I used to have this really dull, boring job typing in numbers over and over. The problem was my job wasn't actually supposed to be typing the same numbers in over again. I was processing orders for personalised vehicle plates. So if your new car, as well as your neighbour's new car, both have the same plate reading 53XE,
why?
That's totally my fault. But it's also totally
why did I jump there?
Password.
It doesn't work that way.
We'd finally meet the others, except we'd learn that they weren't bedraggled, but instead
why doesn't this
were
guy have a
costumes.
fucking health bar?
Rousseau caught a man claiming to be a lost balloonist. He called himself Henry Gale, and most people seem to doubt his story. But after everyone's had a go at beating the shit out of him, nobody can quite prove it. Until they do. Michael's made a deal with the others. He'll get Walt back if he frees the prisoner, but he ends up killing Ana Lucia and Libby. The freed man ends up being the leader of the others, Benjamin Linus.
Who are you people? We're the good guys, Michael.
All along there was the question of what happened if they didn't press the button. There were the weird hieroglyphics, and the questions as to whether it was all just some Dharma Initiative test to see who would be so gullible as to press the button.
Jack, you want to see what's going to happen? Let's just see what's going to happen.
Desmond had
Bro,
years.
I don't
Jack
like
thought
that
it
if you
was
just
con from the
run
start.
up to
Donald
him and
pressed the
touch his
buttons almost
body, you
religiously
take a
until he
hit.
lost faith that it
You should
meant
only take
something.
damage if he
And then
fucking
Mr.
hits you with
Echo
his
took over
sword.
Until John and Desmond.
Why does it hurt me if I just
When
touch
they
his
didn't press the
body?
buttons in the Hatch, things went a bit south. And then to stop things going screwy, Desmond does something that makes things even weirder. Even weirder than telling your best mate that very soon he'll also be his stepdad.
Like the Hatch blew off your underwear.
For season 3, things will be split between the beach survivors, who are mainly going around in circles, and Kate, Jack and Sawyer, who are the captives of the others. They live in the rather nice bungalows left behind by the Dharma Initiative, where it's nicknamed by Sawyer as New Otherton. You can stay in New Otherton by booking on Airbnb. The only problem is, flights are limited, and once you do find one, booking the return leg is a real hassle. One of the others, Juliet, played by Elizabeth Mitchell, is a fertility specialist brought to the island to work out why pregnant women were dying. And it will take us a long time to work out whose side she's on. She'll make a connection with Jack when Ben has a tumour on his spine that only Jack can treat. After the others have tortured Sawyer and threatened to kill him, Kate sleeps with him in a deserted polar bear enclosure, which is not as unromantic as it sounds, but does smell exactly how you think it does. The others make sure that Jack saw all of this, and for a time he might even cooperate with Ben in order to get a ride off the island. That is, of course, until John Locke appears. When they're all back at the beach, it will take some time, but then Juliet will eventually be accepted.
What? No!
That's not our agreement. You need to stay here until your work is finished.
It's impossible.
Oh my
Benjamin Linus
fucking
was
god!
always 5 steps ahead of everybody else. His mother died during childbirth. He was brought to the island as a child by his father Roger.
Why doesn't this guy have a fucking health bar either?
Initiative. And then later on, Ben would orchestrate a gas attack which killed everybody else in New Arlington, and he'd eventually become the leader of the indigenous people, the Others.
After all he did to you and your people, you should hate him. But you still fixed him up.
He took Rousseau's baby and raised her as his own daughter, Alex, for whom he cared a great deal about, but in general, he was a pretty ruthless guy.
No, John, unfortunately, we don't have a code for there's a man in my closet with a gun to my daughter's head. Although we obviously should.
Michael Emerson took a role that was basically the show's big villain for several seasons and made you not hate his guts, even when he was being so utterly despicable.
You seem to have some communion with this island, John. And that makes you very, very important.
A big showdown between Jack's group and the Others will begin. Charlie dies, putting out of action a jamming signal, and they will make contact with people coming to the island. But are they coming to rescue them? Jack finally says something that he should have said sooner.
Why are you sticking up for Sawyer? He'd never do it for you.
Because I love you.
But that's nothing compared to the flashbacks where Jack is clearly having a bad time back home. And that's when Season 3's finale dropped the big one.
We have to go back, Kate.
Boom. Now that's a cliffhanger. They're off the island and now Jack wants to go back, which, considering how hard it was to get off the island, does seem like maybe he should have thought about it a bit more before leaving. He's completely out of sorts because he won't be able to get a refund on his ticket thanks to a bullshit restocking fee.
You're done keeping me on this island.
Season 3 was a few steps forward in some ways and a few steps backwards in others. Much of the action in the early part of the season would be set on the Others facility on the nearby island, later known as Hydra Island, where the Others are just written as being pure evil, torturing people for no good reason, other than because they could. Ben Linus proved to be the ultimate villain. You hated him, but loved him at the same time.
This is where you shot Locke and left him for dead, huh?
Yes, Hugo, I was standing right where you are now when I pulled the trigger.
Juliet, with her dry sense of humour, would make a good addition to the castaways. Back on the beach, things seemed to be travelling in circles for a while. Mr. Echo had been built up as a main character but was quickly written out. Charlie was also written out at the end of the season after making a sacrifice that had been foreseen by Desmond when he was in that phase of seeing the future, but of course only the parts where Charlie dies. Now I'm sure that's not an awkward boat ride. Charlie ends up as a character written out where you didn't want him written out. Until, of course, you remember those Charlie flashback episodes, and then, by thunder,
no
you were
fanfare.
Just so happy he was gone, and then you missed him.
Dude, it's fine. I don't even want to go on your stupid boat.
Time for a short, spoiler-filled detour to look at the world building in Lost. Rather than talk about the rest of Lost in a strictly chronological way, we might save a little bit of time by going sideways, like somebody who's just bought their dream Porsche 911, though we will endeavour not to slam into a telephone pole, unlike that engineer from work who's earned a plethora of nicknames over the years like Sideways Sam, Crashy McSmash, and Perennial Bus Passenger.
Because destiny, John, is a fickle bitch.
But particularly from Season 2 onwards, Lost will begin to weave its own lore by giving us small snippets of information that, over time, will build up a picture of what's been going on, how it went, and in some cases, why it was going on. The Others had, well, if not worshipped...
What? How are you supposed to do that?
...somebody called Jacob. Richard Alpert was directed by him, and Ben used Jacob's influence as a way to control the Others. Except he never saw him.
Now, I'm asking you to trust me.
To trust Jacob, who told me to do this.
Why would Jacob ask you to lie to your own people?
John Locke, though, did hear Jacob's voice, as did others.
Well, it's a wonderful foot, Richard, but what does it have to do with Jacob? That's where he lives.
Much later on, we learned that Jacob was just this dude who'd grown up being hated by his brother, who's got no name, just the Man in Black. Over time, other people would come to the island, the first of which appeared to be shipwrecked slave Richard Alpert in the 1800s.
I don't like that
Jacob
mechanic.
Gave the gift of not aging. He was played by Nestor Carbonell.
Man, this game is like back and forth between really cool and then fucking annoying as shit.
Incursions by other groups. For example, in the 1950s, the Others destroyed an army unit who left behind a hydrogen bomb.
18 members of an army battalion right here in our jungle. They're setting up this camp. I was forced to kill them.
The Others in the 1950s included a young Charles Widmore, Later on, a group called the Dharma Initiative came to the island, where they set up several installations such as the Hatch or the Pearl or the Orchid, and built a bungalow village for their staff, known variously as Dharmaville and later New Otherton. They were led by Pierre Chang, and their intention was to harness the abundant electromagnetic energy and, for shits and giggles, make people press buttons every 108 minutes. Apparently the energy was such that it just needed to be released and someone had to press the button. At one point we'd learned that Desmond not pressing the buttons on time is what caused the island's energy to spike just as Oceanic 815 was in the danger zone. That's gotta be awkward, brother.
I know this is hard to understand.
The Dharma Initiative often found itself at loggerheads with the original inhabitants, who they called hostiles but we know as the others. An uneasy truce had been agreed upon. And then Ben Linus, sick of his abusive father, betrayed the Dharma Initiative in an event known as the Purge, and would one day become the leader of the group that in lost terms would be known as the Others.
Where do you get electricity? We have 2 giant hamsters running in a massive wheel at our secret underground lair.
That's funny.
After being banished, Charles Widmore would use his immense wealth to get back to the island and prevent anybody else from finding it. At one point he organised a fake Oceanic Flight 815 to be found at the bottom of the ocean, complete with 300 corpses. I mean, Amazon really does sell everything.
It's worth more than you could make in a month. To share it with you would be a waste.
Widmore would go to extreme lengths to keep Desmond away from his daughter, Penelope, who'd later organise her own search for Desmond. Widmore's girlfriend at one stage was the mysterious Eloise, who would appear every now and then and give people like Desmond cryptic clues about what they had to do. Eloise would be the one to outline to Jack and the others how they could return to the island, and of course, she's Daniel Faraday's mother, which likely makes Widmore his father as well. At some point, a group of French scientists found themselves on the island, and most of them went mad apart from a very young and very pregnant Danielle Rousseau. Her child was taken from her by Ben, and she would spend 16 years on her own, where she would become more and more paranoid, even more paranoid than somebody who thinks that aircraft leaving contrails are part of some mind-controlled plot to make people watch Major League Baseball. She would have a brief reunion with a grown-up Alex before, well, the others followed Jacob, or at least thought they did, but they had various leaders. At different points in Lost, the others are sometimes very evil, and at other times they're more benevolent. Of course, like everything, it all depends on who their leader is at the time, where having somebody like Ben and Charles Widmore would make the others behave more aggressively and maliciously towards outsiders, whether it be the crash survivors or the Dharma Initiative. Basically, like diarrhea, evil drips downwards. The island has special properties, whereby it can heal some people, turn some people evil, and then of course there's this lingering problem where many pregnant women will often die. We'd eventually learn that the island was home to some very powerful and long-lived people. Jacob and his nameless brother, usually clad in the colour of the darkest hue available, but for brevity's sake was often just called the Man in Black. They were raised by the woman who killed their actual mother after their birth. Their adoptive mother raised them to appreciate the island, but the Man in Black wanted to leave. Their mother then anointed Jacob as the island's protector by him drinking some water from a cave leading to the light.
Why is this so annoying?
Are you still following?
What the fuck?
The Man in Black killed their mother, Jacob killed his brother.
What the fuck?
Now known as the Smoke Monster. A creature that could take on other forms whenever it wasn't causing
Oh my god!
The Man in Black would appear in many forms, such as Jack's father, Christian Shepherd, and in the last season, he appears as John Locke. Jacob attempted to explain to Richard what the island actually was. A cork holding in the darkness. It's at this point that every sommelier watching was punching air. Other WTF moments. Christian Shepherd is also Claire's father. Locke's father is the same man that Sawyer was looking to kill for destroying his family, and Ben somehow brings Locke's father to the island so that Locke can kill him in order to become the leader of the others. Jack had a choice of
what the fuck?
Crash victims, where he chose the
oh my god!
Though of course, it's lost. So the other patients.
Why is he attacking sideways?
Examples in flashbacks where the characters are.
Oh my god! Attack down, you bitch!
Why?
Because you have work to do.
In Lost, the only coincidences.
Oh my fucking god!
That way you kept shouting, "Hey, I'm one of the Ocean
Fuck!
6."
Season 4 was where the flashbacks became flash forwards. 6 of the castaways have returned home.
Fuck this fucking piece of shit game!
Kate and baby Aaron. Life is pretty bad for them. They've been lying about what happened to the others in order to somehow protect them. Kate has claimed Aaron as her own son. and was together with Jack for a spell, but that didn't work out, and he's become addicted to painkillers. Saeed found his lost love Nadia, but she was killed, and he instead becomes an assassin for Ben, killing associates of Charles Widmore. I mean, it's coincidence, surely. Some of this is coincidence.
Let's not confuse anyone.
Some of the Oceanic Six, as they're known, are persuaded that they need to go back to the island. On the island, a freighter arrives full of mercenaries sent by Widmore. And of course, Michael was working undercover for Ben. Also on the freighter, a pilot, Frank Lapidus, was originally meant to be the pilot on Oceanic 815, archaeologist Charlotte Lewis, sarcastic psychic Miles Strom, and jittery physicist Daniel Faraday, a man who's been cursed to live equidistantly between 4 Starbucks. Faraday had been conducting experiments with time travel, where at some point he works out that Desmond has a special affinity with time.
I think of.
Oh my god, more?
I wonder if that's going to be a major plot point.
Fuck!
The mercenaries on the freighter are led by Kimi, a man with the third most punchable face on Earth. And it turns out they're not there to rescue anyone, but to capture and extract Widmore's longtime nemesis, Benjamin Linus. I once sent mercs to capture and extract my old office nemesis. Well, I left a paper bag full of dog shit on his doorstep, set it alight, rang the doorbell, and ran. The plan would have worked so much better if A, he was at home at the time, B, it was his house, C, his neighbour's house hadn't sustained several $1,000s in fire damage.
You know those nuts that think the moon landing was faked? Well, this is like that. Only real.
The mercs kill many of the plane survivors and or others, as well as Rousseau, Alex's boyfriend Carl, and then Alex herself.
You know, those are 15 years old.
Throughout the season, there's the question of who's the body in the coffin. So Ben ends the season by moving the island. Oh, and he also teleports off the island through a warp that takes you from the island to anywhere you like, just so long as it's the Tunisian desert. Teleportation is great. It cuts down on commute time, toll charges, and speeding tickets. But the major downside is you have a 1 in 5 chance of involuntarily soiling yourself compared to, say, a 1 in 2 chance on a cruise ship. Now, if you think that cruise ship figure is a bit high, you have clearly never shared a stateroom with my cousins during a food poisoning outbreak. Oh, and the body in the coffin turns out to be John Locke.
All of you have to go back.
At times during Season 4, Lost would become an action thriller in many of the scenes set on the island and the freighter, with people alternating between
How is there
blowing
not
things
a
up
fucking
and preventing them from blowing
respawn?
No good.
while trying to work out how half of
Oh
those
my
survivors
god!
on the island
Fuck this piece of
control
shit
their
game!
why they hadn't worked out so well for the Oceanic Six, and why Jack had felt they had to lie about those on the island. They apparently had to protect those who were left behind, ostensibly from Widmore. Whereas Lost seasons had generally taken place over a month, Season 4 was all over the place. With
Oh, what the fuck?!
taking place over a space of 3 years.
How did we get here?
So the 6 of them, and Desmond and Frank, had gotten off the island, but then Season 5 was them trying to get back to the island. Clearly, Lindelof and Coos were possibly inspired by the 1978 made-for-television movie Rescue from Gilligan's Island, where Gilligan and his friends were rescued, but then ended up back on the island.
And that energy, once we can harness it correctly, it's going to allow us to manipulate time.
Season 5 was the year of time travel, where people from the present travel back to a time that is the past for them.
Go!
But both the past and present will combine to try and...
Oh my god! It's fucking 10 hours to move forward by 5 fucking
The
feet!
old future will never happen, replaced by a new future based on the old past that totally cancels out the present. Got it? Look, I can't say it any simpler than that.
Oh my god!
Those who survived the freighter explosion and made it back to the island are Jin, Miles, Charlotte, Daniel, Juliet, Sawyer, and Locke, where they find themselves time traveling, either individually or in groups.
What year?
1988.
The problem is, the longer that you've been on the island, the worse it is for you. Charlotte, having returned to the island after being raised there, dies from her injuries, and John Locke is separated from the rest of the group. They will jump backwards and forwards in time, seeing younger versions of Charles Widmore, Ethan, Charlotte, Danielle Rousseau, Faraday's mother Eloise, and I would like to say younger versions of Richard from the 50s and the 70s, but he's exactly the same.
Could be 5 minutes. Could also be 5,000 years.
That's just awesome.
John Locke finds that he has to convince the Oceanic Six to return to the island.
You're gonna have to die, John.
Which is certainly a very bold sales pitch from Richard. The time travel stops with the group ending up in the mid-70s, where they'll manage to join the Dharma Initiative. Sawyer and Juliet will become a happy couple, but after 3 years, they will be joined by some of their old colleagues. Most of the Oceanic Six will return on a flight to Guam, piloted by Frank and with Ben and the embalmed corpse of John Locke in tow. Yes, Locke got off the island to convince his friends to return, but ends up being killed by Ben.
And I'm very sorry I murdered him.
The flight encounters some turbulence and ends up making an emergency landing on the island's neighbour, Hydra Island. I mean, Hydra Island is a nice place to visit, but the airport amenities are rather slim, with the duty-free store only selling mangoes and boar jerky.
As far as bringing back the people who left in order to stop these temporal shifts, that's what really the science behind.
Jack, Kate and Hurley have ended up on the main island, but they're in 1977, where they find Sawyer, Juliet, Miles, and Jin, who can now speak English. The trio will also end up joining the Dharma Initiative. Saeed is in the same time zone, but he's captured by the Dharma Initiative. He will befriend a young Ben Linus, who will set Saeed free, but then Saeed will also shoot the kid, either because he wanted to prevent Ben Linus's bullshit, or possibly because Saeed was really not a fan of Harry Potter. Where could Lost be without sudden acts of violence?
Alright, dude, we're from the future.
All of this is leading up to Faraday's theory that if they exploded part of the old hydrogen bomb that was dumped there in the 50s, they could in theory change history so that the plane never crashed. This is all of course taken on faith, since Faraday is fatally shot by his mother, who was pregnant with him. Now there is somebody who's not going to get any goddamn flowers on Mother's Day. The bomb is detonated, but rather than fixed time, well, at the very least, everybody who's still living is now in the same time zone.
That has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Season 5 was Lost as a science fiction show. The time travel in the first half allowed us to see events that we previously only heard about, while screwing with our perceptions of what Lost was. It was either a mess of ideas, or a show that could do anything if it wanted to. The reality was, it was a bit of both.
This is how they found the island.
There's a lot of cool stuff happening with the Dharma Initiative and Daniel's idea that if they set off part of the hydrogen bomb, they might prevent the island's electromagnetism from making Oceanic 815 crash.
They come, fight, they destroy, they corrupt. It always ends the same.
At the end of the 5th season, the island's longtime protector, Jacob, was killed by Ben, who was convinced to do the deed by John Locke.
Oh my!
And rather than celebrate that John Locke was alive, it's complicated because it's not Locke.
It was right back where we started.
Final season of Lost puts aside the science fiction elements and doubles down on mythology, destiny, and the supernatural.
He's alive.
It's split into 2, except the flashbacks are now to 2004, when Oceanic 815 lands normally in Los Angeles. Nobody has died, apart from Christian Shepherd, and then we
fuck
follow
this
our
piece of
characters in
shit
their
game.
lives. Well, sort of, because Sawyer and Miles are detectives. Hurley's made peace with being rich, but remembers the island after meeting Libby. Saeed, Jin and Sun are all somehow involved with the gangster Kimi. John Locke and Benjamin are teachers, while Desmond says he's trying not to kill John Locke when he's trying to kill John Locke. Jack reconnects with his son, whose mother of course is Juliet, and discovers that, like him, Claire is also the child of Hawk the Slayer. The people left on the island are being whittled away one by one. Apparently the people from Oceanic 815 were people with shitty lives who'd been maneuvered to this point by Jacob. They were candidates to take over as the island's protector. Now, you might think getting out of jury duty is a pain in the butt, but try and see how far a note from your boss gets you with some long-lived being with supernatural powers.
I chose you because you were like me. You were all alone.
So in the end, a show that was partly sparked by the success of game show Survivor ended up taking a part of its overall plot from Survivor.
I want you to have the one thing that I was never given. A choice.
Except in Lost, when you get voted off the island, you either drown, explode, or are shot, which is something I am reliably informed has only happened a very few times to actual Survivor's contestants.
I'm just glad it's not me.
Charles Widmore had bankrolled another mission to return to the island, where he uses Desmond as a guinea pig for his plans.
Obviously, you're not John Locke.
Everything else I know is a combination of myth, ghost stories, and jungle noises in the night.
But of course, Ben reverts to type to settle an old score. Now, the endgame in Lost hinged on a final battle between the island's new protector, Jack, and Lockie the smoke monster dude. Turning into a column of smoke doesn't sound like it has a lot of practical uses, but it does have one advantage, in that you can hide from your creditors in a house fire.
Because I died an hour ago?
Sorry, dude, that sucks.
Season 6 has those curious but interesting scenes set in Los Angeles, where things are just different enough, but for a reason. On the island, though, events can be very circular, where things head to a final showdown, but very slowly. There's still an awful lot of hiking across the island, and Charles Widmore being there for no reason that amounts to anything other than stalling for time. What? 2 entire episodes are origin stories, one for Jacob and his brother, and another for Richard. Every surviving plane survivor, or leftover other, is knocked off, and we'll start to lose our main characters, so that only a handful are left by the very end.
You're leaving us!
No, trust me. You don't want to be on that sub.
But we'll return to look at the final episode a little later on in this video. Now, with all of that out of the way, I'm sure the rest of this video will just fly by, unlike Oceanic 815.
Did you guys shoot a polar bear last week?
Yeah?
Where'd that come from?
Jack starts off as the guy who wanted to help, but he was also the guy you really didn't want to organise your bachelor party because, look it up, self-flagellation isn't half as erotic as it might sound.
I won't know how extensive the damage is until I...
What the fuck? Why wasn't I able to hit him?
But Jack always being so intense.
I was this close! All of a sudden, he fucking started juking me every fucking time!
Having watched a documentary about the lives of the cast of...
Oh my fucking god!
Entirely get away.
Fuck this fucking game!
She had that ongoing simmering thing with Jack that went nowhere for a very long time, but then she also had Sawyer as a backup. In fact, lots of people had Sawyer as a backup. Sun and Jin ended up speaking quite good English by the end of the series. Sun gave birth to Jin's daughter, and Jin would become more and more chill as the show progressed. They were apart from each other for several years, until a brief reunion just before somebody had the bright idea to get them all on a submarine. Claire disappeared for a bit, leaving her baby behind, and when she reappeared a few years later looking for Aaron, she wasn't quite the same. Saeed had been a torturer who hated it, and on Lost would end up being tortured himself quite a few times. He'd left the island, found happiness with Nadia, then lost her when she was killed. He became a shell of a man while working as an assassin, then tried to recenter, and then when he returned to the island, he died and then was revived by the others, but felt nothing, and then he died again. Juliet became a trusted member of the group and settled into a happy life with Sawyer, but the spell between the pair was broken once Kate showed up in Dharmaville. Juliet died after being pulled into a shaft. Oh, and that little matter of setting off the hydrogen device.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
Sawyer could never get past his need to be hated, but would find a niche when he lived with Juliet and worked for the Dharma Initiative.
You're gonna do great.
He'd had his revenge by killing the original Sawyer, which didn't give him all that much peace. Charlie could never find his place on the island. He was not seen as somebody that you could trust with anything dangerous or important, and honestly, I think I found Charlie's off-island flashbacks to be just the worst. Worse even than that time that I noticed that the bread was mouldy after having eaten half the foot-long sub. I mean, I still finished it. I'm not made of money or penicillin.
Maybe you are just a lonely old man.
Why am I not jumping?
John Locke for a time proved to be the most gullible of gullible idiots.
Go! You fucking bitch!
But he was instead manipulated by the likes of Ben into acting like a fool. Plain survival would follow John Locke up to a point, and then the others were willing to follow him. Locke was never malicious, but he does some really dumb things in order to prove a point.
The island wanted me to get sick. It wanted you to get well.
But he was also willing to sacrifice himself for the people on the island, something that he thought was his destiny. However, Old Smokey don't give two shits, and the last season's unstoppable evil, not Locke but partly Locke, mainly works due to Terry O'Quinn's fantastic performance.
I'm gonna destroy the island.
Why is it not?
Daniel Faraday was a character
it's not working.
Anybody other than Jeremy Davies playing. He had
what the fuck?
To give them in season 4, and then he just couldn't stop in season 5.
We just need to keep it together till there's another flash. All right? Then all this disappears.
He was in love with Charlotte, who'd hid the fact that she was in fact returning to the island after having been raised there. Both died on the island, which in Destiny terms is known as a die one, get one free. Jeff Fahey as Frank Lapidus gave off the vibe of a pilot who seemed like he was permanently in happy hour mode, and he was a really handy character to have as a regular in later years. Alan Dale, who for some viewers outside of the US, was hard to take seriously as a villain after his stint as Jim Robinson in Neighbours.
As usual, Benjamin, I'm 3 steps ahead of you.
Widmore had been one of the others, became their leader, was eventually usurped and banished by Ben.
Oh my
sparking a lifelong antipathy
fucking God
that would last decades. His final plan, well, I guess it doesn't really matter since Ben had the last laugh.
You guys were on Oceanic Flight 815.
Why is the platforming the hardest part of the fucking game?
Miles couldn't see dead people like Hurley, but he knew if he was close enough to a fresh corpse that he could know their last thoughts. Ken Leung gave us the most sarcastic character in the universe, but one who would often voice the same plot concerns as the cynical viewer at home. He would discover that his long-lost dad was Dharma Initiative head Pierre Chang, and that he and his mother were not abandoned. Hurley found a sort of peace with passing on messages from the dearly departed, you know, talking to dead people.
Oh my God!
Conversations with dead people all the time when I drove a hearse. But pro tip, if you're a bored hearse driver, mourners really do not appreciate.
What is it doing that for?
Sam, how about you tell me everything up front? I'm not big.
Oh my fucking God!
This was a show that I watched on its original run, but only for the first 2 seasons.
Oh my God, dude!
But because real world events for me at the time,
I just want to get the fucking save point and turn this fucking piece of shit off!
But now, having watched the entire series in full for this review, I really enjoyed Lost. The ending had long since been spoiled for me, but I was still interested in how it unfolded.
How long is this video? I've been doing this shit for a fucking hour!
I went through the entire series relatively quickly, where I'd pause for a few days in between seasons, but once I spooled up again, away I went.
I wasn't being entirely truthful. When are you ever entirely truthful?
There are certainly good arguments to be made for watching a show like this 1 episode a week, but I'm very glad that I can watch a show like this at my own pace without waiting months for new episodes or having to endure commercial breaks. This show remained impressively mounted and very well cast for the main characters and mostly well written.
Do you even know what that word means?
By mostly, Lost is still a show that has episodes that could be described as filler, even by the show's creators. Sometimes the flashbacks seem to add little, while the island scenes are far more interesting, and vice versa. It's like driving on the highway, and one side of the road is full of spectacular scenery, and the other side of the road is strewn with wrecked cars driven by inattentive sightseers.
I got a question, boss. No questions. So you got to ask a question.
Very few episodes or flashbacks ended up as purely filler, as they would contain threads that would be picked up in later episodes. Apart from the episode about Jack's tattoo, that goes nowhere faster than a broken down truck at the bottom of a steep hill, Lost was a network series, so the episodes would need to run for 40 minutes to fill a 1-hour slot on ABC. With a continuing story, episodes would need to end strongly to bring viewers back the following week, and each act within the show would have to end with some sort of climax to keep people watching after the break.
Son of a bitch.
It rarely slows to the point where it will drag, though on balance.
Well, here's a wacky idea.
The amount of random hiking across the island reaches almost comical proportions. Yes, I'm aware they can't just call up an Uber, but the amount of times where a purposeful hike will get sidetracked by something or someone is a thing to behold.
Or maybe when we get there, you'll want to go back to the orchid again. And when that gets boring, we can head back to the beach. It's the only 2 plans you people have.
The random violence coming out of nowhere where somebody is suddenly shot or killed seems like, well, we needed something for the end of the act, and that could get a little tiring. Or cutting to a commercial break after a character makes a major declaration.
Thought you trusted this guy.
I lied.
If you made a supercut of every last sentence before a commercial break or the end of the episode, possibly half of those revelations would go nowhere. The number of times somebody declared that they would kill somebody and do a commercial break, and then they didn't. It's a large number, but after having watched Lost, maybe don't use any of those numbers on your next lottery ticket.
It wouldn't be so bad if the run back wasn't so bad.
On the whole, it's a great cast with very few
Fuck
weak
these
links,
guys!
Though some of the characters were not as interesting to viewers as others, and this is exemplified by flashbacks. Popular or more important characters got at least 1 flashback. Really important characters got several flashbacks a year, and the ones that the writers didn't know what to do with had fewer flashbacks. Hence, Boone, Shannon and Claire in particular had fewer flashes off the island.
What are you doing? Let's not waste any more time, shall we?
The flashbacks or flash forwards or flash sideways are an important part of Lost, though some folk hate them, and truth be told, I generally was not enamored with them at first. In hindsight though, they are incredibly important to understanding why these characters are the way they are. It's not as if these people ever just bother to talk to each other. The flashbacks, or at least the first few for each character, are their origin story, which makes them very, very important. Flashbacks are important because it makes you understand the character. Think about it. Say you have a co-worker who's a sullen bore with ridiculous facial hair and an inferiority complex. Then if you saw their flashbacks to a time in their life where events shaped them into a sullen bore, then you might understand why that prick Jeff is such a sullen bore. Geez, Jeff, chillax.
I can't.
Very early on, it was realised that there were only so many times you could flash to Jack and Christian Shepherd sparring, or Kate's latest attempts to evade the Marshal, or Sawyer's latest cons, and if you were really unlucky, it was another Charlie flashback. On the other hand, I personally really enjoyed the flashbacks involving Desmond, Hurley, Miles, Juliet, Ben, and John Locke. Even some smaller characters like Rose and Bernard or Richard each got a decent flashback.
I have needs.
Having said that, the best flashback that Claire received was her flashback when she was in her goth phase. Claire was a character who would disappear for a while and then come back for the final season, an understandably changed character. There were many other characters introduced over the years, some of them becoming almost as important to the main plot as the original crash survivors. And that does not include the dozens of characters appearing in the various flashbacks to events off the island, where the show would be able to put in an impressive number of familiar faces as the various relatives or partners or people from their past. Actors like Julie Bowen, Cheech Marin, Nathan Fillion, and yes, Hawk the Slayer himself, John Terry. Lost would often end up being about two diametrically opposed characters butting heads. There was the obvious schism early on, which was just a pissing contest between Jack and Sawyer, which was mainly about attracting Kate's attention. This would then be replaced by Jack and John Locke being unable to appreciate the other's point of view. Jack was the person who believed in what he could see and experience as being real, while John Locke was often guided and sometimes misguided by the notion of destiny. Though what his destiny was would change every few weeks.
You know why I'm here?
Yeah, sure. Do you?
The war between Ben and his others and Jack and his survivors played a big part in the middle of the series, while the others had earlier warred with the Dharma Initiative. The battle turned personal later on when Mega Rich Charles Widmore and Ben sparred with each other. Ben wanted to lead the island and was overlooked when John Locke seemed to be the person who was destined to lead. Of course, as things turned out, that might prove a tad difficult. And then there was the ultimate contest, the oldest contest, the two brothers, Jacob and the Man in Black. Jacob wanted to protect the island, while the Man in Black, later on wearing Locke's form, was going to destroy it. I totally understand it, since I personally am engaged in a sort of war of wills with Marcel of the courier service, Marcel Masters Faster Parcels, where they will not knock on the door before leaving a card saying that I have to arrange to collect my parcel from their depot. Even that time when I was changing the battery on the doorbell and standing right there on the porch, they still gave me the bloody card. That name again, Marcel Masters Faster Parcels.
Interesting choice of theme.
Yeah, Mom really doesn't get it, dude.
Person or persons being shipwrecked on an island is a very well-known subgenre of fiction going back to Robinson Crusoe or the Swiss Family Robinson. Television had been in on the act for decades, with several pilots and short-lived series popping up along the way, though Gilligan's Island became the obvious thing that you would first think of. There were others, they just dropped off people's radar. We've even covered some of the more science fiction versions of the stories like Lost in Space or The Fantastic Journey. But Lost would be a blend of so many genres that it is very hard to categorize. Calling Lost a drama is too generic, but we have action, we have thriller, we have character drama, we have mystery, science fiction, mysticism, spirituality, the supernatural, an action show. Basically, Lost is a show that would give the Dewey Decimal System
Fuck
an
this
aneurysm.
game.
This is the weirdest damn funeral I've ever been to.
Let's
TV
go,
mysteries that
let's
sustained
go.
over
Fuck
more
this
than a few
game. Fuck
episodes
this fucking
were
game.
still fairly rare in the 2000s, especially on network television. History had taught program makers that if your show dangled a question over the characters, in a buzzy program at least, then you have to answer that question at some point. But conversely, if you answer the question, people will quickly lose interest. Twin Peaks was a huge hit in 1990 on the back of the mystery of Laura Palmer. But once that mystery was wrapped up, audiences quickly lost interest. Likewise, on series like Moonlighting or The X-Files, once you spent several seasons teasing whether or not the main characters would end up together, and then you finally have them hook up, then sated viewers would go and watch something else. Sustainability was the key. A show with one or two central mysteries or a bit of sexual tension had a very limited lifespan. But what if you had multiple strands of mysteries?
I haven't seen one of those in 20 years.
Lost's creation is credited on screen to Jeffrey Lieber, J.J. Abrams, and Damon Lindelof. But it's a little more complicated than, hey, I've got this great idea, and then 1 week later, a pilot was greenlit. Okay, maybe it's not all that complicated. ABC executive Lloyd Braun wanted a drama with the vibe of game show Survivor and looked at a television version of the movie Castaway. It sounds silly, but think about it. A volleyball winning an Emmy for Most Outstanding Actor in a Supporting Role would certainly have been a sight to behold. Writer Jeffrey Lieber was given the task of writing a pilot, but that first attempt was considered a little too ordinary. Then J.J. Abrams was approached about his ideas for a show about castaways that, ideally, wasn't legally based on the film Castaway.
How come anytime there's a hike into the heart of darkness, you sign up?
Prior to Lost, J.J. Abrams had written for a variety of movies, dramas, comedies, whatever the hell Armageddon is. His first major television series co-creation was Felicity, which turned out to be a cult hit, while his spy drama Alias had done decent but not spectacular business for ABC. Alias would turn out to be a proving ground for several contributors who would eventually work on Lost. Alias had been up and running for several seasons, but by this point Abrams was concentrating on another pilot for a potential series about bounty hunters called The Catch. He wasn't initially interested in taking on another project at the time, but when ABC seemed fine with adding more mystery and supernatural elements, Abrams started working on an outline with Damon Lindelof, who'd initially only wanted to meet Abrams because he wanted to write for Alias.
Freaking polar bear. Polar bear.
You didn't hear about the polar bear?
The pair's outline impressed ABC, and a pilot was greenlit. They just had to go and write the thing and make it very quickly. The rush to get the pilot ready to shoot meant that casting took place before a full draft of the script was finished. Actors would audition for roles that hadn't yet been written, often performing lines written for characters that they weren't in line to play. The initial plan was for Jack to be the hero, and then he'd end up losing his head by the end of the pilot episode. That didn't happen. Or did it? No, of course it didn't. That's silly. Or did it happen and I just blew your mind? Some actors were cast because producers just liked them and would create roles specifically for them. Sometimes, I do exactly the same thing. The other day I was intending to bake some chocolate chip cookies, but I was too lazy to look up a recipe, so I just winged it with whatever was in the pantry. And to cut a long story short,
oh my god!
And anchovy strudel is something that I really will never forget.
No. Why am I not attacking there?
In the case of Lost, the casting
why did it not
very well. Abrams would direct the pilot. Reportedly a very expensive pilot,
fucking god!
$14 million with a very large speaking cast, all being sent off. For that absolutely authentic touch, the production bought an old mothballed jetliner, cut it up, and shipped it to the shooting locations. Of course, the cynic in me might say they could have saved a lot of cash in shipping fees had they flown the plane to Hawaii and bailed out just before they were about to crash into the jungle. And that, dear viewers, is why I no longer work as a health and safety officer. It was that, and because they did not go for my designs for a much more stylish high-vis vest that only came in matte black.
We don't even know what happened. Do we need to know?
Lost premiered in September of 2004 and was a ratings hit for a network that at the time really needed some big hits.
There are plenty of things on this island we can use for sustenance.
And exactly how are we going to find the sustenance?
Fans of the new show quickly began constructing their own theories as to what was going on. Were they all dead and in purgatory? Was it all time travel? Did the rest of the world end? Were aliens involved? My own outlandish theory at the time was that they were all actors in a TV show, but I have no proof of that.
The future of the project is in your hands.
While Abrams was the show's early figurehead, his involvement with the day-to-day running of the series was soon limited as he was off preparing to direct his first feature film, Mission Impossible 3, a film that hasn't necessarily aged all that well, but at the time would reinvigorate a film series that had stalled creatively. Early collaborator Damon Lindelof would take point and was joined midway through season 1 by Carlton Cuse. As executive producers and showrunners, the pair would be the show's creative centre, often writing several milestone episodes. In some sections they become known by the portmanteau of Dalton. But me, being the sort of twisted person I am, I prefer to think of them as Lindy Loos.
Better or worse?
Hughes was the more experienced of the two, where he'd been a creator or co-creator of Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., Martial Law, and Nash Bridges. Lindelof was a relatively fresh writer when he joined J.J. Abrams on the project, having previously written for Nash Bridges and Crossing Jordan.
I'll report back when I know more.
They had discussions with the network about when Lost might finish almost from the beginning, but at that point the network wasn't interested in taking a new hit show and ending it. When Lindelof and Hughes' contract came up for negotiation after 2 seasons, they again raised the idea of fixing a finish date for Lost. Lindelof was thinking about a 3 or 4 season show, while ABC was prepared to talk about ending Lost, but after 10 seasons. Which is an awful lot of trekking across the island and failing to notice many remnants of a prior civilization.
Oh, then I won't even bore you with an explanation.
Eventually, agreement was reached for Lindelof and Hughes to stay with the show for a 6-season run, with the last 3 seasons being shorter than the usual network TV season. In theory, this would allow for more planning and for costumers to buy up Hawaii's entire stock of hiking boots.
Son of a bitch.
Lindelof would say that one of the problems in stretching out a story so far was finding ways to keep the characters on the island, and so they formed the idea of some of the characters going home and then having really shitful lives completely devoid of hiking, so that they'd have to return to the island.
You wanted the secrets of the island? Well, here they are.
Lost would remain an expensive show, shot almost exclusively in Hawaii, mainly in and around the island of Oahu. Shows would take around 9 days to shoot, yet maintained an almost film-like quality throughout the show's run. Lost would mainly be shot with 2 cameras running during each take, which helped keep the show's production schedule on track. You'd have scenes on the island, both in locations and filmed on sound stages, which for much of Lost's run was in the same facility where the old Hawaii Five-0 and Magnum PI series were filmed. The famed Kualoa Ranch was used in many episodes, but so were many local streets and businesses standing in for locations elsewhere. Hawaii has a long history of television and film production, though most of the time it seems to play itself. Lost only had a few scenes set in actual Hawaii. The place's natural beauty is also seen as a stand-in for other exotic parts of the world in films like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Jurassic Park. But the upshot for an American crew filming in Hawaii was they wouldn't need visas or passports or have to avoid saying the phrase, "So you guys like soccer?" There were occasional scenes shot in Los Angeles for logistic reasons, and a few brief scenes shot in London, but pretty much everything else in Lost was filmed in Hawaii. The islands were doubled for Tunisia, Iraq, South Korea, Africa, Scotland, Finland, various parts of the United States, and Australia. Coincidentally and mixed
Are you
with
shitting
Barclays,
me?
Uncle Reg was shot in all of those locations, and his
How is it that massive run back and then a fucking epic boss fight?
This location works very well. Down to
I can't enjoy the boss fight because of the fucking run back!
And occasionally special effects are used to augment the scenes. Most of the time this works well enough, but in filming a show in 9 days in Hawaii,
it would be really fucking cool! But they ruin it with this fucking bullshit! These fucking balls!
I've been getting you off on my skag for over a week now.
Lost would often ship in actors from Los Angeles for major guest roles or use
Oh
local
my
actors
God.
for smaller speaking roles and as extras. And in trying to cast for roles requiring specific accents,
I know this sounds ridiculous.
there were some well-intentioned failures.
I can't do this.
Accents. We all have different accents, and we all love to bag on movies and TV where actors have terrible accents.
The closest you ever came to a religious experience was Celtic winning the cup.
Look, if you're from Manchester in the United Kingdom, do you have an issue with the accent of Charlie, or his brother, or Naomi?
You're the rock god, baby brother.
Even if most of them are actually from Manchester.
Come on, Charlie. Jump in. I'm gonna catch you, boy.
In a similar vein, native Korean speakers will often comment on the unrealistic accents of some of the Korean characters. Same with French and Arabic speakers in Lost. I personally cannot say because I'm not an expert.
Well, why don't you say so?
It's also possible that even realistic accents can sound highly exaggerated when speaking with an American actor in the same scene. Or not, whatever the case may be.
You can't really expect me to believe that you, a British woman and a Chinese man, are all members of the United States military.
But I can talk about the people from the land of the giant hairy spiders, like the one crawling up your
Fuck
leg
this
right now.
game.
No, the other one. Claire is the only major Australian character on this series, though she is at least played by an Australian. Apart from Kimberly Joseph as a flight attendant, most of the other people appearing as Australians in Australian set flashbacks were not usually played by people who, well, could convincingly portray an Australian accent.
Phil is offering 50 grand to anyone able to guess how many beads are in that jar.
We're talking Leonard Nimoy bad.
I ain't gonna believe this.
Or the cops at the end of Point Break bad.
You let him go!
Of course, not all were terrible. Maybe Lost characters just happened to bump into every South African living in Sydney. In later seasons, Lost's casting people would tend to do a better job in finding genuine people who at least sounded like they grew up in the shadow of the giant eight-legged overlords. There are also minor quibbles about the portrayal of Australia where things that would be feasible in the US were simply not issues or likely to happen in Australia. But that's probably the case for every other country that's featured in Lost. Or perhaps Americans watching this can't hear anything.
No!
If this weren't the middle of nowhere, I'd say you were lost.
A slight digression, but it's a little known point of Australian history that the Great Australian Civil War of 1988 involved armies of giant hairy spiders, like the one on your leg, facing off against an army of that other local menace, the cane toad. The cane toad was an introduced species. Well, they make a really nice popping sound that nobody minds too much. The cane toad was, of course, originally imported from Hawaii to control the cane beetle attacking sugarcane crops. But the cane toad itself quickly became a major pest. So with the dodgy casting of the Aussies on Lost and cane toads, that's 2 for 2 with Hawaii fucking us over. Look, I'm nitpicking for 2 reasons. 1, it's what I do. And 2, I think I may have hair lice.
That's really tough.
Television networks in the United States generally showed their best programs between September and June, though by the mid-2000s, full season of television was generally 22 episodes, which was often spread out over 9 months with reruns in between. This is not that much of a problem for most episodic shows. Lost, of course, began with the usual pattern: show a few new episodes, and then show a few reruns, and then new episodes. Viewers rebelled, especially when they were trying to follow a plot that had more twists and turns than a rally driver's daily commute.
I don't really know how to do it myself.
24
What the fuck?
conceited episodes being told in
Oh my god!
more or less unbroken.
I couldn't even see what the fuck was
The
happening!
plot much more easily. Season 3 would be split into 2
Go!
batches of episodes shown continuously. This was better, but like my attempt at a world record for high jump, was still considered suboptimal. Once Lindelof and Hughes knew that they would be ending the show with Season 6, each of the final 3 seasons would be shown in almost unbroken weekly runs.
Skeletor seems to like it. Bottoms up.
It's not cool, dude.
Of course, that's just the US. Everywhere else would have to deal with waiting for weeks or months for episodes to be screened locally, with the internet spoiling almost everything almost immediately. Some superfans would just pirate the episodes as soon as they'd been shown in the US, rather than wait for the local broadcaster to pull their finger out and just show the damn thing.
What? Can I let Sadie show me the
Why am I not tagging?
In May of 2010,
In the right direction.
Lost's final episode would screen in the US.
How's that gonna work? I'm not sure yet.
You fucking piece of
Charitable.
shit!
Certain revelations proved polarizing. Some loved it, others did not. And the ones that did not will tell you within about 15 seconds of the subject of Lost being raised.
What do you want to do that for?
The final episode would run 1 hour and 45 minutes, or 2.5 hours with commercials, and many viewers hoped it would wrap up everything with a nice, neat bow.
I expected to be a little more surprised. You're sort of the obvious choice, don't you think?
On the island, Jack and John face off, where they head for a mysterious underground cabin. Locke wants to douse the light at the heart of the island to destroy the place, while Jack is going to try and save it. Desmond is involved because, yeah, sure, why not? So in the end, for many fans, like Oceanic 815, the Lost finale did not stick the landing.
It's gonna be a bad one.
Smoky Locky Monster becomes mortal and is defeated, but Jack is also mortally wounded, reigniting the island's inner light. Hurley becomes the island's protector, Ben stays to advise, while the last few survivors make it to the plane on Hydra Island and take off. Meanwhile, all the people in the Los Angeles flashes start remembering their time on the island, and they meet up in a church where Jack was to have the service for his late father, and then...
I died too.
You're shitting me. Jack sees the Ajira plane fly overhead as Vincent, the doggo of death, comes to say hello. The credits then play over scenes of the Oceanic 815 crash site. So what, they died in the original crash? Okay, we're done here. Wait. Back it up. We're not done yet.
I don't get it.
Let's break it down. The common complaint after watching the finale in the casual way that we watch event television, why the hell would you ever watch this show when you knew they were already dead? That's the interpretation that many gleaned from watching this episode.
We're all dead.
But there are three elements at play where one of those three doesn't mesh well with the others. One, the simplest, Jack's death, where he dies heroically, saving the island and his friends. Okay. Two, the nature of the season 6 flashes to LA where they didn't actually happen. This was from some sort of timeless place.
You're all dead?
For Jack to see all of his friends before moving on. The critical line from Christian Shepherd.
Some of them before you, some long after you.
That all squares up. I mean, it's a very television thing to do, but fine. Then there's the third element, the crash footage, which for most viewers is way more in your face and very hard to miss. Which tended to obliterate the first two elements. In the minds of many, they were dead all along, which makes everything not only a moot point, but turns it into a super hyper mega moot. A moot to end all moot, to a point where moot doesn't do the mootness enough justice. Just as saying moot 15 times in a sentence gets funny, then tiring, then funny again. But disregarding the mootness for a second, Damon Lindelof has said in post-Lost interviews that the network had added in the footage of the plane crash at the end. And that, no, they weren't all dead, and everything that happened in the series happened in the world.
Go!
The season 6 flashes to Los Angeles. Of course, that's context that most viewers didn't have, and still don't have since that credit sequence is there. Of course, if you need to watch interviews and podcasts with the writers to glean a pretty fundamental piece of information, like the network adding the crash footage, or the fact that they're just not all dead, then that's where you have a problem.
No, John, I don't like it at all.
Well, now you know what it was like to be me.
And on this channel, we generally will only treat what's on screen as canon. So anything that you get from interviews, podcasts, comics, webisodes, ARGs, tie-in novels, etc. is incredibly optional, and really it's only for the superfans. Most folks will just watch a show the once, and that's it. When you have a finale like this, you really only have one chance to tell that story. However, I have just enjoyed Lost so much that my recommendation is to watch the show, just stop the episode when Jack closes his eyes. After that, then it makes sense.
당신이 싫은 것처럼 나도 싫어.
It's a fun, wild ride, but if you're not fast enough with the stop button, then it's a right pisser.
If you were to stop this.
However, for some people, pressing stop at the right point might not be enough to fix your overall perception of where things ended up. Different Lost viewers will have different things that they liked and didn't like about the final season, and of course the finale. Lost really would push the envelope of finales that required extra reading for them not to suck. Now, we don't normally give numbers for reviews, but in the case of Lost, it's 9 out of 10 if you press stop at the right point, or 6.5 if you can't find the remote in time because it's fallen in between the cushions.
Do you have any idea what I've been through?
There are many things that I've enjoyed in my life that ended suboptimally. There was Game of Thrones, Mass Effect 3, and then there was that trip to Universal Studios during that brief period in 2002 where they had a real shark. Now, sometimes you get over disappointments and dismemberments and enjoy something again. And sometimes you just have to hold on to it and let it coil up inside you like popped up Macarena snakes.
That's the kind of drama Bernard and I don't want to have anything to do with.
Damon Lindelof says he's happy to own the perceived flaws of the finale.
Really gonna fucking bum rush me?
His career working on bigger projects where he's also written for big budget films and created or co-created or overseen several series like Watchmen or The Leftovers.
I'll have to do until I can think of something else.
Not long before this video was posted, Carlton Hughes was developing a Star Wars series with his son. So whether or not that ever gets made, there is somebody who's getting a really big Father's Day card. Was the journey rewarding enough? Perhaps, just so long as I wasn't on Oceanic Airlines.
So for me to try to explain whatever's happening...
Oi!
I asked myself the question, would I watch again knowing how it ended? Probably would in a decade, or I could just let it flare up inside me like a Macarena snake.
You have a therapist?
It's very stressful being another Jack.
The downside of Lost's success, every producer and his dog and his dog's primary care veterinarian and
Bro, how are you supposed to
mate was now pitching dramas anchored around major mysterious events or overusing flashbacks to add
It would actually be a lot better if you
continuity
didn't take
and
damage
presentation.
simply for
Or if
running
you're
into
really
them.
Unlucky,
Like,
or
they should not have
you
hitboxes
have
if they are
shows
not
like
attacking
Event,
you.
Flash Forward, Leftovers, Alcatraz.
Why do I
Manifest,
take damage
Severance,
just for
La Brea,
touching them?
Fringe, Yellow Jackets, Under the Dome, Surface, Heroes, Jericho, Arrow, and way too many others all took influence from Lost in the way they told a parallel storyline, or used flashbacks, or had multiple overlapping mysteries, all asking questions faster than actual journalists at a press conference. Of course, over time, these sorts of shows would appear less on networks and would flourish on streaming platforms, where some of the shows will resolve their mysteries and others don't. Some are more action-adventure oriented, and some just use catastrophe to make the main characters react to a miserable existence. And in some cases, answering every single question was not the point of the show.
You know that guy they killed off the previous
All right,
week?
don't tell me. I don't want to know.
He's not dead, he's back.
In the end, Lost went metaphysical in a battle between light and dark, and two people who may have both been named John on their birth certificate. If you watched Lost more for the vibes than the answers, then you sure got those. And funnily enough, the vast majority of questions were actually answered by the end of season 6. Not all, but most.
We're supposed to buy that?
Ask the man who communes with the dead.
Lost was a show that makes a sort of sense while you're watching it, but often only in the moment, and then only really in the season that you're watching.
And God help us if it ever leaves this island, because if
When you binge the show, you'll sometimes come up against the fact that this is a television show and minor goofs would make it into the final show, or that there is some dialogue that doesn't actually gel with what you saw in an event that was meant to occur only moments earlier. There are things that Lost never really gets round to explaining, or for various reasons, things that were just dropped like a pair of flaming gloves.
Yeah, I talked to lots of dead people. So you have conversations with them like they're your pals?
Lost wasn't a dour drama, but it could be funny, though most of the humour came from Hurley or Miles or Sawyer. I often found myself giggling at the show, not necessarily at the jokes, but at the latest plot revelations. When it's not trying to make your heart pumping from the thrills, or other parts pumping from the sexy cast, or making you laugh.
Pickup truck blows a tire on the highway.
It will also tug at your heartstrings. Lost has a little something for everyone. And a little bit of arse too, if that's your kink.
That was messed up.
Lost's prestige as a viewer favourite and critical darling saw it nab various awards. The show won Emmy Awards for music, for visual effects, sound and editing, but also acting awards for Michael Emerson and Terry O'Quinn. The series also nabbed Most Outstanding Drama in its first season, as well as Best Direction for J.J. Abrams for his work on the pilot. Lost also won a Golden Globe, but you know, Golden Globes.
She just strolled in here a couple of hours ago, acting all weird. Still hot though.
Lost's audiovisual presentation was almost uniformly excellent, from the camera work, direction, sound and editing. Usually very, very top notch. And Lost often had excellent special effects for the time.
I don't know what is more disquieting. The fact that the rest of the statue is missing, or that it has 4 toes.
Lost had a large budget for television at the time, but the late 2000s CG on a television show budget will always have a certain look. The more ambitious some CG scenes were, the more cartoony they look these days, where, at times, the kindest thing you can say about some sequences is that they are animated DVD menu level quality, but thankfully the really subpar scenes are relatively few and far between. Lost has an awful lot of CG enhancement that will go unnoticed by 99.9% of viewers. Lost of course doesn't rely on CG, it still has a lot of practical sets and special effects wherever possible.
Wondering what would happen to you if I put a bullet in your head.
Why don't we find out?
Composer Michael Giacchino's music uplifted Lost, where the music was mostly created using live musicians at a time when a lot of television scores were made using electronic samplers and synthesizers. However, Lost's iconic spooky noise that played over the title card was made by series co-creator J.J. Abrams on a synthesizer. History does not record if Lost's spooky title card was also generated by J.J. Abrams while fiddling around with Lightwave on his old Commodore Amiga.
We just appeared off a plane in midair and ended up in 1977. Getting kind of used to the scene.
Lost, having come together fairly quickly, would feature characters that ended up very differently from their original conceptions. Some roles were written for the actors that they'd cast in the pilot. Kate and Jack are good examples of characters who were originally written one way, and by virtue of who they cast would end up being written another way. Jack originally wasn't supposed to make it past the end of the pilot, and a married Kate was the lead character, where she was meant to be looking for her husband, and she wasn't a criminal.
I'm Kate.
Jack.
Characters would change to suit who was cast, and of course if they just had better ideas.
Does anybody know how to use a gun?
I think you just pull the trigger.
In the pilot, Kate can't use a gun, whereas a few episodes later, in her flashbacks, she's auditioning for The Matrix. Shannon and Boone ended up being incredibly superfluous characters, as did Claire and Charlie to a lesser extent. Several series leads would be written out over the course of the series, either because the producers felt the show needed character deaths to show the stakes were real, or the characters weren't going anywhere. And on a few occasions, according to the actors, their characters were written out because producers didn't want to deal with concerns raised by cast members.
If that's the case, then why'd they kill Nikki and Paolo?
Who knows why those people do anything?
Almost all of the departing cast members would return for various cameos or guest appearances, though there's still a little bit of a stain around the reputation of the show's producers that Damon Lindelof at least has acknowledged publicly.
Why would someone try to kill you? Because they don't want me to succeed. They want to stop me.
Michelle Rodriguez had only wanted to do one season, so Ana Lucia was never going to be a permanent character. Mr. Echo was, but despite British actor Adewale Akinoya Agbaje being signed on as a regular, the actor really did not want to be on the series and was written out in Series 3, with many of Echo's planned storylines being shared with other characters. Desmond was not meant to be a regular, but would become an important part of the story. Michael Emerson only joined the series for a few episodes as Henry Gale, but his performance was so good that he was made into Ben, the leader of the others. Nestor Carbonell may have made sales of Maybelline eyeliner skyrocket. Now, eyeliner's not so bad. I'm wearing some eyeliner right now, and it really makes my eyes pop. But I do tend to use a cheaper brand, and that's why they used me on the advertising campaign for Maybe It's Sharpie.
Son of a bitch.
Lost had many popular side characters, but asking people who they liked least often ended up with the usual suspects. Zoe, a character who appears out of nowhere in the last few episodes of the last season, just made you wish you were watching 30 Rock. Some people don't like Ana Lucia because she's scowled, but screw that. I would nominate Martin Keamy, but only because he's so evil. Of course, the correct answer is Nikki and Paolo in Season 3. They just appear in Season 3 as two annoying crash survivors that had apparently been there from the beginning, and they instantly became the least popular characters in the show. Such was the immediate negative reaction to the pair that they were written off the show mid-season. They were killed in their one showcase episode, but written out in one of the most horrible ways, where the wannabe grifters are both paralysed.
Benny Frank. Whiskey.
Cracky.
What? Why is there not? Why is there not a fucking thing? Bro, it's too long in between checkpoints. It's too fucking long in between checkpoints. What the fuck?
by spider venom and accidentally buried alive by the castaways.
Did you hear what I just said? We can't even get fire!
Lost was a show where these characters had terrible relationships with their parents. Jack's dad was a hard taskmaster who had to die before he said anything nice to him. Kate murdered her dad. Hurley's dad ran off. Locke's dad stole a kidney. Sawyer's father killed his mother after being conned by Locke's father. Daniel's father was an evil rich man who spent a fortune to keep the island a secret. Locke's father got him in trouble with gangsters. Alex's dad did nothing while she was executed. Walt's father was Michael, who betrayed the castaways and killed Libby and Ana Lucia. Locke's father pushed him through a window and crippled him. Jacob and the Man in Black's adoptive mother bludgeoned to death their mother just after she gave birth. So, when you put it like that, Jack's dad wasn't so bad.
Please, just let it go.
Lost was a haven for shippers, viewers who get attached to the idea of a real or imagined couple ending up together. There are the skaters, the Cacs, but also the Joyers, the Anajusias or the Anafids, the Jates, the Soyaks, the Shaniels, the Hibbies, the Cyanans, Bernots, the total pervs known as Clocks, and of course the ultra weirdos into Smarlet. Most would end up disappointed apart from the skates, but here I was hoping for Kate to end up with the pilot Frank, since that pairing would be known as Freight. Many of the cast remained associated with Lost to the point where it is, for many, still the biggest thing that they worked on. A few have broken out doing other things, but it's so hard not to see somebody as, oh hey, it's Claire, or it's Hurley, or it's Sawyer, or it's Locke, or whoever. At a time when prestige television was quickly becoming the preserve of cable television, Lost was one of the last generation of American network television series that turned into appointment viewing, where you had to watch the show to keep up with water cooler conversations. The internet was an even more Lost-friendly place, where blogs and websites and forums and podcasts dissected every little piece of information, some of them coming up with some really quite elaborate theories as to what was going on. Lost was a well-made show that asked a lot from its viewers, and much of the time delivered with some obvious missteps along the way. On balance though, I really did enjoy it, and it's something I definitely see myself rewatching every now and then. Decades after Lost ended, people are still watching it. They're still talking about it, they're still rediscovering it, and unfortunately, they're still making videos about it.
I need it to be over.
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Don't think about Lost today. Tomorrow, Lost. All day. I can't wait to hear about it. Jack? No way.
Fuck this game. I can't believe there's no waypoints. There's no save spots.
I don't